The Minnesota Vikings are 5-0, and they were able to do that after winning a quote-unquote dirty football game against the New York Football Jets in a 23-17 victory. And I've just got a couple takeaways. I've got a couple of responses to that. One, my first response to the quote-unquote dirty victory by the Minnesota Vikings is, was it actually as dirty as we think it was? They were up 17-0 in the first half. The Minnesota Vikings offense was not as fluent as it has been through the first 4 weeks of the season. But the New York Jets have one of the top defenses in the NFL. It was never going to look as easy as it did versus the New York Football Giants, as it does against the Jets. So I want to push back a little bit on the dirtiness. Sam Darnold was not as crisp as he was through the first 4 weeks of the season, but he never was going to be that crisp all season long. They were 14 for 31. He had a passer rating in the 50s. His QBR was like 19. It wasn't great. 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. But how different would be be looking at his performance if C.J. Ham didn't run that into the end zone, got stuffed at the 1. Then the Minnesota Vikings do a little play action fake. He finds Josh Oliver or Johnny Munt, some tight end or some fullback or some receiver in the end zone. 1 touchdown, 1 pick. That makes his stat line look a lot better versus having 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Probably changes his passer rating a bunch. Probably changes his QBR a bunch. So was this game as dirty as we think it was? Aaron Jones gets hurt. The Vikings offense isn't marching up and down the field, but the Minnesota Vikings defense stepped up when they needed to. So I just don't know if it was as dirty as we are saying that it was. But Luke Kuechly went on the Kay Adams show, a former great linebacker for the Carolina Panthers. That's who Luke Kuechly is. And he had this to say about the Minnesota Vikings.
I like what you're saying because I think it's important that I think a lot of producers on a lot of shows this morning are crafting segments, questions about the Jets. And what you're saying, which I find so incredible and refreshing, or seem to be saying, is that this win was much more about the Vikings than it is about the Jets.
Well, it shows, the storyline for the start of the season is Sam Darnold's lighting it up, blah, blah, blah. And then yesterday, he plays against a good defense. He doesn't have his best game. The defense for the Vikings steps up, and they can still find ways to win. So they can win going away when Sam's plays great, and then they can also win dirty games. And I think that's just the mark of a good football team. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to Kevin O'Connell, Sam Darnold, and Brian Flores for the job that they've done this year.
Now, I understand why the consensus is that this was a dirty football game for the Minnesota Vikings, especially because they've been so lights out through the first 4 weeks of the season. But they were still up 17-0. And when the Minnesota Vikings were needing a score late in that game, Sam Darnold put together a drive, and they kicked a field goal. You take away one bad pass from Sam Darnold on a 3rd and 15, and the Minnesota Vikings probably blow out the Jets, and it's not even a discussion at this point. You get rid of one bad pass from Sam Darnold. So I just don't know if it was as dirty as everyone is saying it is. It wasn't pretty, but was it dirty? I don't think so. They still won by 6 points, and the defense made plays when they needed to make plays. Now, I get why this is a consensus from people, because the Minnesota Vikings weren't as smooth as they have been throughout this regular season. I disagree with that premise, but I get why people have it. And let me respond to this premise that this was a dirty victory. If this was, and indeed, a dirty victory by the Minnesota Vikings, then they need to figure this out, because it is amazing and important that the Minnesota Vikings can win with their C- game. But it becomes a problem if you're needing to continue to win with your C- game. You're going to have games where it's not an A+ all around. And it certainly wasn't an A+ offensively, but it wasn't an F, it wasn't a D-. And when you have those games, it's good that you can still win. But if it becomes a consistent theme throughout the regular season where your offense is playing at a C- level, then it starts to become a problem. So this bye week is very important for the Minnesota Vikings, and it comes at a great time in the regular season. You know, you're going into a bye week, you're 5-0, your offense is perfect. What do you work on? What's the problem? What needs to be fixed? Well, you're 5-0 still. Your offense showed some rockiness versus the New York Jets. Things could be improved upon. And now you can enter the bye week looking at those things and trying to fix those things, which is kind of a good thing. You know, if you're 5-0 and you're torched the Jets 40-10, what is there to work on? What's the big thing that needs to be fixed? So, in all reality, it's kind of a little backwards. It's a good thing that the Minnesota Vikings had some struggles against the Jets, because now that they are entering their bye week, they can work and fix those things versus struggling against the Lions and then having a short week to prepare the following week. So this is a big break for the Minnesota Vikings. And even though it wasn't as dirty as I think it was, it's good that they have a specific area of focus entering this bye week that they can try to fix. So that's my reaction, my continued reaction to the Vikings' victory over the Jets.